Alright, and welcome. We're going to be doing some Fallout 4 today, but we're not going to be focusing specifically on gameplay or anything like that. It's going to be a little bit different. This is just a performance optimization video for Fallout 4. I was able to unlock it today on Monday at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the way I did that was with VPN. I set it to New Zealand, and they get their game about 16 hours earlier than, let's say, Eastern Time in US. So I set that, I launched Fallout 4, I launched Steam, and from there it started to download some files. It unlocked it, and I set it to offline mode, and then I turned off my VPN, and I was able to launch into the game, and well, here we are. Well, after fiddling with some of the settings to get the proper performance that I personally enjoy, you know, I like to be at 60 FPS, at least at about 90% of the time throughout the game, especially achieving that throughout combat. Well, one of the things that I noticed immediately was that the game was having some issues. Even though I was at 60 frames per second, I kept noticing things were jittery and jumping around, and it was pretty annoying, and it was jarring experience, especially if you strafed and also started to turn your view. You notice just massive amounts of juddering. We're going to take a look at that and how you could fix that so that we can get a more seamless, smooth experience. After this video, where I'm going to show you some comparison between the two different effects, I'm also going to show you my settings and what I've been able to achieve. And well, right now I'm not running on a super high-end computer, but pretty much all the games that I play run at 1080p at 60 frames per second through some minor tweaking. And right now I have an i5 2500K running at 5 gigahertz, and I also have a GTX 670. It's overclocked and it has 4 gigs of RAM. I also have 16 gigs of RAM, and I have my computer pretty well configured with a little bit later drivers, although I do need to update my GeForce drivers, but right now I notice that it's running fine, and I just intentionally haven't upgraded them. Okay, but again, if they do some GeForce experience like game ready drivers for this game, I may take a look at that one and see if it helps improve performance. Alright, with that said, let's just jump into it. Again, don't expect much gameplay throughout this video because I'm not going to be doing that. That's not the aim of this. I'm trying to set this up so that way if you get this game tomorrow, if this video is uploaded on Monday, I want you to be able to enjoy it at the smoothest possible settings. Alright, so this is with the current settings that are having judder problems. Okay, and we're here, and this area was one of the first areas that really started to exemplify the problem that I was having, that juddering problem. You may strafe left and right, and you see that things hold pretty well, pretty decent. Then you look at certain other angles, and look at this performance. And it pops up sporadically as you're walking throughout the game world. You might be saying, just look at the desk. You could see that it's juddering a lot, and if I start to turn this way, you could see the extreme amount of juddering. I mean, this is just almost unbearable as you're playing the game. And I found a simple solution. No, it's not to lower graphical settings, because as you can see on the top left of the screen, you can see that it's at 60 frames per second. It fluctuates between 59 and 61, but it's essentially holding there. It's capped. And it's not the capping that's actually causing the problem. And in fact, if you look through here, it's not just one particular spot. As you do it, even with a controller, I had hooked up the DS4 controller, and I started to do this, and I started having a lot of problems. And it's a very simple fix. All you need to do is run the game on windowed borderless. Yeah, sometimes it's weird like that. Full screen oftentimes gives you the best performance in a game. It really is able to boost you up some frames and smoothen out things. But I notice in very rare occasions, you could see certain games that do the opposite. You need to put them in windowed, and of course put it in borderless, so that way you don't see the window markings on the side and the top of the screen. So you could see that this is absolutely terrible. Now what I'm going to do is save here, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. I'll show you where you can find the settings. It's obviously before you get into the game. In fact, I'll just keep showing you this here. Excuse that program, and this as well. You'll just press Fallout 4 icon there, hit options, and right here, turn this on and put it on borderless. Settings are exactly the same. As you can see, I didn't change anything else. Now we're going to launch into the game. Excuse me, I forgot to set that up. So we'll switch this. it has a tendency to reset that whenever you switch to windowed mode and back to full screen. So do make sure to watch that, or else same thing is going to happen to you. Alright, well I'm going to skip this loading so that way you don't have to see that. Alright, we're back. Now you're going to immediately notice just how much more smoother it is. I'll go back to that same spot. You can see as I strafe, nice and smooth. Look at that desk. Look at this desk over here. As opposed to the bench back here that was juddering when I started to turn. You could see it's holding pretty well. In fact, let me go ahead and hook up my controller so that way I can make those movements even smoother. And again, we'll do it with the mouse. And you see how things are much more smoother in comparison to before. And we'll check out this spot over here. You see that it's much smoother. It doesn't have the problem. It went away. So that's one thing you're going to want to look out for, because no doubt you may be running the most badass computer in existence that you may have built yourself. And you may be running, let's say you unlock the frame rate and you get in 2,000 frames a second. And you have a TV or a monitor that can hold up to that. Not that there is, but let's just assume that. You're still going to notice that problem where it's going to jerk and jitter. Now, it may your mileage may vary depending on your system, so you might not have that problem. But my current settings that I'm using right now, bearing in mind I'm not in the most ultimate computer out there by any stretch. I'm going to be upgrading my computer at the beginning of next year, so things are going to be a whole lot better. But for now, to be able to attain the 60 frames per second, I have these settings on there. Texture quality, I have 4 gigs of RAM, so 4 gigs of video memory, so I'm able to put it up to ultra. It's not a problem there. Shadow quality is at high instead of ultra, just because I wanted to smooth out about 5 frames difference. And then for shadow distance, I put it on high again. Decal quantity, I have that on ultra. I really haven't noticed a problem with it, but then again, we're in the early part of the game. If there's some sort of a problem that the game has with that, I'll report about that later, but so far, no problems there. Lighting quality, I have it on high, and I put it on ultra. Haven't noticed too much of a difference, but I was able to get a few frames boost with it on high, so that's something you may want to look at. God rays, that's a very interesting one. The effect isn't always on and pronounced, so you can't just see it. It's more like when the vault door opens up, you can see these nice sun shafts appearing there, and it looks really good. However, if you start to lower it too much, you'll notice that it'll look more pixelated, and of course the higher you put it, the more clear it looks. So that's something you're going to want to fool around with and see where you want it to be at. I noticed that medium gives me an okay quality, and the performance is right there, and it's able to keep me at 60 FPS. And then of course bokeh, if that's what you want to use, you can either put it on low or you could put it on higher quality. I turn it on because in conversations, if you decide to stay in that conversation camera, well, your depth of field is going to look better. It's going to look clear. I don't really see the point of putting it on lower. I really don't see the effect at all when I'm playing the game, but I do see it when I'm in that conversation, so it's like, why not? I don't see any performance issues with that. Screen space ambient occlusion. I actually have a couple of screenshots that I can show you so you can see the comparison between the two. Let me go ahead and pull that up. Okay, and here we can see the difference between the screen space ambient occlusion for those of you who aren't aware or you want to see the difference between it in this game. And here you have it without it, and here you have it with it. In fact, let me make it a little bit bigger. So you can see the difference between the two is pretty pronounced. It's a nice subtle effect. This one just looks too pale and washed out and looks pretty ugly, as opposed to this one that looks much more darkened in areas where it should be shadowed in. And I really didn't notice much of a performance penalty for having it. Unlike certain games that aren't well optimized, their screen space ambient occlusion can cost you something to the tune of 15 to 30 frames per second. It's pretty bad. But this game handles it pretty decently from what I can notice. But of course, your mileage may vary depending on your system and your configuration. So that's something that you may want to take a look at. Alright, that was a look at Fallout 4's performance. We're really not going to go too much into it. I don't really want to talk too much about its gameplay systems because this is just a video to give you a quick tip in order to be able to get your Fallout 4 running as smooth as possible. Alright, well I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you on my next Fallout 4 videos. I'm going to be putting a lot. It's going to be gameplay, and eventually I plan on also putting a lot of mods and stuff like that and reviewing them and taking a look at them and showing you how you can install it into your system and all that kind of good stuff. Alright, I'll see you then.